The Honourable Nikki Wagner.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The New Zealand public told us they wanted a safe border. They want to make sure that it's secure against illegal people, illegal goods, and that's drugs, firearms and objectionable material, and they wanted us to manage biosecurity risks, such as fruit fly, foot and mouth. And this is what this levy will do. This levy, the Border Processing Arrivals and Departures Levy, will amend the Biosecurity Act and the Customs and Excise Act, and it will place a border clearance levy for arriving and departing passengers. And I want to make this very clear that this levy is only cost recovery. It will be put into a trust account. It will have nothing to do with JBMS because JBMS deals with goods. This is to do with passengers, and JBMS deals with goods, and JBMS goods have always had a levy. The goods have had a levy since the early 90s, so this is exactly the program that we're going to introduce for passengers as well. But I want to start by answering Mrs King's question. What is the difference between a levy and a tax? And why is it absolutely consistent that the Prime Minister has attacked the UK carbon tax and is absolutely supportive of this cost recovery levy? Now, the New Zealand's cost recovery levy is about $20, maybe $22, and that reflects the cost that the New Zealand taxpayer is subsidising for every single passenger that comes across our border. Now, the UK tax is about 150 New Zealand dollars. And although $20 of it may be used for a border levy, the rest of it is a carbon tax. And it was designed to be a carbon tax. It's a carbon tax on distance, a carbon tax on air miles flown for long-haul passengers. And of course, that is calculated on the number of miles, and that's particularly tough on a country like New Zealand on the opposite side of the world. At the moment, if you look at the status quo in New Zealand, it's a lose-lose for New Zealanders. Every New Zealander is paying for other people to come across our border, and then, on top of that, when they go to another country, they have to pay to go across their borders. So not only are we paying for our own borders, but we're paying for everybody else's borders. That's lose-lose. This change will mean that it's best international practice, and it will bring New Zealand into a place that is much more satisfactory for New Zealanders. Now, I'd also like to explain to Mr Lees-Galloway about the cost of this. Now, it's all to do with addition. What our press release said, it was going to cost $16 at arrival. The levy is $16 at arrival and $6 at departure. And the reason for that is there's much more work at the arrivals than there is at the departure, because we deal with biosecurity at arrivals rather than departure. And instead of it being inflationary, as he seems to think, it's actually going to be deflationary, because I think it's probably going to end up about $20. So we believe it's $20 well spent, $20 well spent for New Zealanders to protect our borders. And just let me make it very clear, this is in comparison to Australia, which is $58, and the UK, which is $150. Now let's have a little bit of a chat about JBMS. I would like to answer Mr Shearer's queries and Mr Terakatni's questions. JBMS is working well. I make it clear again, it manages goods, not passengers. Goods have always paid a cost levy. So this levy actually brings passengers in lines with goods. Now, I'm really pleased to be announced a really good news story. Right now, we've just been able to tell you that JBMS, the Joint Border Management System, has just reached 2 million transactions. I did put a press release out about this time last year when we got to 500,000, but we've now got to 2 million transactions. Fantastic. And on top of that, we now have exporters now have the ability, the tools, to be able to register online themselves. In the past, it used to take 24 hours to register online. They can now do it within minutes. And that's a fantastic improvement for JBMS. I'd also like to tell you that every week, more companies are transferring to WCO3, which is the new data protocol. This is cutting-edge, latest technology, latest data protocol, and every week more and more of our transactions through the JBMS are moving that way. So I'd just like to make the point. Customs is 175 years old this year. It's their oldest department, 175 years. We are also dealing with cutting-edge technology, cutting-edge IT, and I think it just goes to show that you can teach old dogs new tricks. Now, also, I would like to just make a comment for the member, Stephen Browning. He was concerned about private yachts. This levy will be in place for private yachts, private aircraft, and anybody that comes across our borders. As it is now, every yacht and every aircraft that comes into New Zealand goes through the customs process for arrival and departure, and we will collect the levy at that time. So he needs to understand that we'll be doing a good job. And finally, I want to get back to Reno Terakatni again. I just want to tell him that we're not taking biosecurity or security at our border lightly. He seems to think we take it lightly. Did he realise, he probably hasn't realised, that we've actually put $30 million in this budget to beef up what we're doing at the border on top of this levy. So this is in the meantime, there's $30 million going in here. And I also want to tell him that nobody seems to believe that this will make a difference to tourist behaviour. This is less than 1% for a long-haul flight, the cost, and it's only one of thousands of variables that people have when they have a travel. For example, how much does it cost you to get to the airport? What do you eat at the airport? What do you buy duty-free? What do you spend on entertainment on the plane? What do you spend in your country? So the interesting thing is that I had a look at some research that said in the last month, the average Australian visitor to New Zealand lost more than $20 just on the exchange rate between Australia and New Zealand. So this is not going to make a chance. And in fact, I have a quote from a well-respected tourist leader who says, "It won't make a blind bit of difference." So the key issue here, I just want to summarise why this levy is so important for New Zealand and why New Zealanders should be pleased to see it. First of all, it's flexible and future-proof. So as the numbers of passengers and travellers increase across our borders, the resources will be there to manage them. As we get more and they are more risky, we'll be able to make sure that we keep our borders safe. It's also fairer. I've explained that at the moment every New Zealander, every Tom, Dick and Harry is paying $23 in their tax to subsidise international people coming across our borders, people who are on a luxury cruise, people who are coming to play golf in New Zealand. So why should the Whangarei panel beater or the solo parent in Christchurch pay for these people to come across our borders? What we've got now, because the rest of the world is putting these levies, what we have now is a lose-lose for all New Zealanders. And I just want to make one little reflection before I go. Before I was an MP, I didn't used to like paying tax. And I think it was because Labour was in power and I didn't trust the way they spent the money. But now I do understand where the money's going. I know that it's spent wisely and I don't feel so bad about our tax. But most New Zealanders want their tax money to go to something useful. They want it to go to perhaps poorer families. They want it to go to hip operations. They want it to go to education. People like their tax to go to something useful, not to subsidise international passengers. So, Mr. Speaker, this levy is good for New Zealand, it's good for New Zealanders, and I commend this bill to the House.
Grant Robertson.